Victor Black Masterclass presentation is brought to you by www.muscleandiron.com.
Hello, good morning. I just want to answer a question that a client of mine asked me on my Facebook page this morning. It's a very good question. Basically, the question comes up a lot, and it's really, if I try and frame it in general terms, he was specifically asking about, do you have to use this drug or you have to use that drug to achieve an X outcome? This question comes up a lot. I want to answer that by providing a framework that you can layer over really any circumstance or event in the future with with regard to compound selection. So firstly, let me explain that whenever you look at the range of compounds that we have available to us in 2020, we're no longer talking about a half a dozen anabolic and androgenic steroids as we would have been in the 1970s. Today we have literally hundreds of choices of compounds to consider. And whenever you consider a goal or a strategic outcome, there's always going to be multiple choices that you have available to you. Some of those choices will have very distinct metabolic pathways. Some of them will be effectively competitive drugs, so they're competing for the same receptor perhaps, or they're competing for the same mechanism of action. But very often what you'll find is there's different classes of compounds that work on rather distinct metabolic pathways that contribute to a strategic goal, a strategic outcome. So my strategy is always this. I believe you will always be better served by choosing a smaller amount of a number of different complementary and synergistic compounds that all work towards a common goal, rather than choosing a large or bolus dose of any one drug. So, if you follow that framework, if you follow that methodology or understanding, you can appreciate the next logical step in that discussion becomes, well, if you're using 2 or 3 or 4 even different synergistic compounds towards a goal, then what each one of those potential compounds contributes to that goal is going to be relatively moderate, as opposed to just using a large amount of one drug for one task. So, if you follow that framework and you adopt that philosophy, then you're always going to position, say, there's no one drug that you have to use for anything. You might not be able to get access to a particular drug. You might not tolerate a drug very well. It might be too expensive for you. There's a number of very practical, very reasonable reasons why you might not use compound X. And if your strategy basically is to use a small amount of a number of synergistic compounds, removing or indeed adding any one compound is not going to, mean the difference between success or failure. So the short answer is there's never, ever a situation where there's only one drug that does the job. Rather, it's a combination of synergistic compounds executed together in a strategic way in smaller doses that will provide the best, most efficacious, and potentially safest outcome. And so therefore, as I said, the obvious extension of that is by removing or adding any one compound, it doesn't massively change the outcome either for positive or negative outcomes. Hope that helps explain the question. Is there any one drug that you have to use for outcome X? Okay, thanks for watching.
Victor Black Masterclass presentation is brought to you by www.muscleandiron.com.